you for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields. Happy New Year. 4 new City Council members were elected in 2024, and today we are meeting City Councilor Miranda Basye, who serves in the Northeast District. Welcome to Inside Town Hall. Tell us, what made you decide to run for city office?
Thanks, Madeline. I'm excited to be here. And, really, I grew up in Sioux Falls. I grew up in the Northeast. My parents own and operate some businesses there. And as I was going throughout my professional career, I've had the opportunity to be in multiple different businesses, did some economic development nonprofit for a while. I started learning about the municipal governments in the communities around Sioux Falls. And I realized one day, I'm like, man, I know a lot about all these other municipalities, but not a lot about Sioux Falls. And so I just kind of started asking questions. One thing led to another, and then I found myself just learning a lot. And I looked around and I thought, you know what, I could bring new life, new energy to the Northeast. So I just kind of decided, you know what, I think that this is a great way for me to get back to the community that's taken care of my family for generations.
Sure, very good. So, and you went to school here, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Sioux Falls. I was a media studies and Spanish double major. I had the opportunity to play softball there and then also take part in their honors program. So I was busy, but it also afforded me opportunities to just get exposed to a lot of different things. I pursued a career in marketing and advertising, so my background is in digital marketing, digital advertising. Met my husband as I was going through school. He is now a middle school special ed teacher, and we just decided that Sioux Falls was a place that we should plant roots.
Sure, very good. Not a lot of young people decide they're going to jump in and run for city council, and of course you were successful. What are some of the things that you've learned since you started on the city council? What surprised you?
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the way that we led our campaign. I had a lot of help, I had a lot of volunteers and a lot of support, so I felt like throughout the campaign I had the opportunity to develop relationships with a lot of community leaders, a lot of folks that were in, whether it was city staff, city council positions, or other entities. So going into the election, I felt like I had a pretty decent idea of here are all the different things. I would say I'm a bit surprised by the meat of items that are in front of us. I was talking with a mentor shortly after I was elected, and they said, you've got a tough docket of some things coming up, as we think about some of the really big monumental projects that our city is on the cusp of when we think about Riverline, when we think about aquatics and just the growth of our community. So the time, the research, the intention, the process that goes into so many of those big things is a lot, and then to have so many of those up front, I would say that was a little bit of an undertaking, and so I just like to say I'm learning every day. There's a lot of things I don't know, and so just trying to really lean into that and knowing that there are going to be things that I'm surprised by, and just leaning into learning about them.
I've asked every city councilor over about almost the last 20 years I've been doing this show about that question, and one thing they've all said is you don't have to be an expert on everything. And can you explain that a little bit? Because people are afraid to take that on as a commitment because they think you have to know about the sewer and the power and the water systems. What has been your experience with that?
Curiosity is a superpower. I think the minute that you are in a situation, whether it's as an elected official or anything in life, I think the moment that you sit there and you think, I know it all, or I know exactly what I'm doing, you're closed off to opportunities to elevate or opportunities to find the next best solution. And so I think that there's kind of this middle ground of, I need to know enough to move forward. And sometimes moving forward is one baby step. Sometimes it's a big giant leap. I think when you're curious, people are more willing to share with you. And so that's really what I've tried to embody and what I've tried to bring to conversations with city directors, with community leaders. We'll talk about neighborhood association folks and folks that are in their neighborhoods. Using curiosity as a superpower. I just have to be a vessel and a conduit and a good steward of the people around me. I don't need to be an expert in everything.
Sure. What have you enjoyed so far?
I would say for sure the learning. I love learning all things. That's consistent with how I grew up as a child, but then also my education and my career. And so being able to learn a little bit about a ton of things and then draw connections and connect dots to say, okay, well, this might not be seemingly relevant to this, but we're doing it over here. So I wonder if there's a practical application. So that's been really fun.
Okay. And then there, like you said, there's a lot going on in the city of Sioux Falls. And what are you looking forward to over the next 1 year and then maybe the next 3 years as you would wind down after your first term? What would you like to see changed?
Process-wise, I'm first looking forward to getting through like a full budget cycle. I think what a lot of people don't realize is, yes, we had budget hearings and we approved the budget, but a lot of that strategic planning and forethought into what gets presented to us throughout the summer and into September actually happens at the beginning of the year. And so we'll be heading into some of those strategic conversations soon. And so that will be my first exposure to that. So I'm looking forward to getting that full cycle under my belt. In terms of things that I'm looking forward to maybe accomplishing or working on, I think on one hand there's a lot of focus on some of these really big things, and I think rightly so. They're monumental decisions for our community and they have a ripple effect on a lot of things. I'm really interested in taking a look at quality of life in terms of average everyday citizens. I think sometimes we can get really excited about really big things and then sometimes not be as strategic, if you will, or as visionary about some of the other things that like sidewalks or the way we design streets or trees or lights or just some of those things that affect me and my neighborhood every single day when I wake up and go to work. That maybe differs a little bit from some of those more excitable projects.
All right. Well, I wanted to thank you for joining us today, and we're not done yet, but this is not the last time you'll be on this show either. So
I'm sure not.
So we will be visiting again with your guest who is coming up next. So up next, the importance of getting to know your neighbors in your neighborhood, and we'll learn some important resources for neighborhood preservation. We will be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Penning from Falls Community Health, here today to talk about vaping. A vape pen is the type of e-cigarette that is popular, especially among teenagers. They contain nicotine and other ingredients that can be very addictive. Although vape pens contain less chemicals than traditional cigarettes, they can still be harmful to the lungs and the developing adolescent brain. If you have questions about vaping, please contact your primary care physician or Falls Community Health.
Welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we are speaking with City Councilor Miranda Basye. We now turn our attention to Sioux Falls neighborhoods and preservation. Welcome to Diane deKoeyer, who is the Neighborhood and Preservation Planner for the City of Sioux Falls. Councilor Basye, why is it so important to get people involved in what's going on in their neighborhoods and that they should know what kind of activities are going on?
Yeah, I'm really excited to have Diane here to talk a little bit about that. A big part of me getting involved with City Council and really my campaign, but then also understanding what kinds of things my neighbors and the folks in our community really value and the kind of quality of life that they're after has come a lot from neighborhood conversations. And so throughout some of that work, and then also just collaborating with Diane about getting some of the programs that we have, I've been really impressed with the laundry list of different programs that we have that I know Diane's going to talk a little bit about. Just all of the resources that are available that really engaged citizens can help us move forward and get more things done faster than maybe if we relied on folks, myself, to try to administer everything.
Sure, and I'm sure as an elected official, you're getting, people are going to call you about every little thing that happens. Your neighbors, the weeds are getting too high or whatever. Let's talk a little bit about this at the beginning, about why is it so important just to open your door and get to know your neighbors? Is that where this all starts?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen when we're centered around community, and I think back to my upbringing and, knowing our neighbors, and you didn't really think twice if you were out of town because the folks around you were paying attention to your house, right? We didn't necessarily rely on security cameras, or if there was a tree down across the street, it was a whole bunch of people coming together to help move that tree. And so this sense of community, I think, really brings out the best in people. And then I also think about it in terms of our youth. My husband is a middle school special ed teacher, and kind of depending on a child's background or the neighborhood that they're in, that saying of it takes a village, I think, really rings true. So by investing in our neighborhoods and just being plugged into community members, I think that we get a broader sense of how to be good neighbors and how to contribute to the greater good.
Let's talk a little bit about what your role is with the City of Sioux Falls.
Yeah, so as a neighborhood and preservation planner, I work directly with all of those neighborhoods, whether it's an association or a watch group. The watch groups are technically under PD, but we have combined those so that we have a much broader input from the community. So those that are registered within the neighborhood, what that allows them to do is the direct access to me and then other departments, and it also gives them access to our neighborhood grant program, which has been really successful.
Is almost every area of the city considered a neighborhood? Like, does it have a location? Like, for instance, I don't know, is Hilltop a neighborhood, which is, central east part? There was a little grocery store there forever. Yes. So is that what qualifies an area as a neighborhood that has a name?
So yeah, we definitely recognize those type of neighborhoods. They aren't necessarily registered. We don't work with anyone in particular within that area. We would love to, and that's what we're hoping to expand on, so that we have a contact within several of these neighborhoods, whether they're new or old. We do tend to work with more of the core part of the city and the established neighborhoods, just because they've been doing this for the past 15 years or so.
What if you live in an area and your neighborhood doesn't have like a name? Like, we've heard of Whittier neighborhood and the McKinnon Park neighborhood. What if you just have an area where you live? How do you start the process to create a neighborhood and name it?
You reach out to Diane.
There you go.
And I bet we've had like 7 new neighborhoods start just within the past year. Matter of fact, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the potential for a new one, and this is an area that is just west of Lake Lorraine. That's been around for a long time.
Sure.
Whatever they want to call that is up to them. A lot of times we'll go by the name of a park or a subdivision name or something like that. We kind of leave that up to them. They can be as creative with it as they want to.
What's the advantage of creating a neighborhood and having it have a name?
Maybe I'll start and have you maybe jump in a little bit. That's part of how I've been able to connect with Diane over the last handful of months, is some folks in the Northeast wanting to get more involved and wanting to start neighborhood associations. From my perspective as an elected official, having groups that are organized in their public input and in their concerns and their ideas, and being able to streamline those communications is super helpful. If there's a rezone challenge or an idea or some sort of initiative that I want to bring to the area, a lot more can happen and a lot more constructive conversations happen when we can bring a whole group of people together, and then I can be there with that whole group, and they've kind of got their ideas outlined already, and they've kind of done some of the legwork so that we can be really efficient. On top of that, then there are programs like grant programs and other resources that these groups can tap into. They just kind of need somebody to organize and spearhead them, which is where Diane's been really helpful in the meetings and conversations that we've had. Yeah,
and it's been great to kind of have one of the counselors actually really involved with the neighborhoods. That helps me out too, because she has more of a connection, like with this Granite Valley neighborhood, which is in the Northeast within her district. And they've had some issues there. They don't feel like it's a real neighborhood. People don't feel connected up there. We just completed a survey for that neighborhood. It's a very dark area. The park isn't really utilized to its best capacity. So there's some improvements there that we're looking to make. We'll do a light audit, working with Light and Power on that. and then maybe through the neighborhood grant program to be able to do a few more amenities within the park. But again, that means we have to reach out and work with like Parks Department, other departments. They want to be able to do a block party this spring or summer so that people can meet and get to know each other and make that kind of connection. I think up there people feel a little bit kind of like on their own island, a bit disconnected, and especially those with children, that's a good opportunity for them to all get together and kind of coordinate some different interests and issues that they might have up there.
Sure. So there are some programs that you had talked about. There's a loan program, and then there's a grant program for folks who maybe need to do some improvements on their homes, or can you talk a little bit about those programs? Why are they helpful?
Yeah, so I won't talk in super great detail because some of our housing folks help with some of those things and administer some of that, and so they would have a lot more detail on that. But especially as Diane mentioned, some of the core neighborhoods, and I'll use Whittier as an example. We've been engaging with some folks there, and trying to get some different ideas going of how we can help support them in some of their visions. Especially in the core of our city, we've got homes that are older. Older homes probably mean that there might be some appliances that are going out, and especially if you take into consideration housing prices right now and life right now, things are expensive. And so being able to support folks that, if their furnace goes out, or if they've got issues with their roof, or some of those structural things that, one, contribute to their quality of life in their home, but two, I think for us as a community, being aware that that's a home in our community. And so we get to support kind of that continuous evolution or revolving home stock, if you will. So making those kind of programs available to folks, educating them on them. I've been really grateful for Diane in sharing resources and helping get these individuals that are really spearheading the neighborhood association efforts, helping kind of disseminate, if you will, that information out and getting constituents connected with the right folks in the housing division.
Is there a checklist on how to start creating a neighborhood, either association, a neighborhood watch? Does a neighborhood watch come first, or does the association come first, or doesn't it matter? Or
it just depends on what it is that they want, what they're looking for. So yeah, we have a neighborhood handbook that anytime anybody's interested in starting one, I'll send them that first so they kind of understand what the process is. And then getting registered and defining what the boundary of that neighborhood might be, or what that would look like, especially if it's adjacent to some other existing neighborhoods that we're already working with.
Is there a cost to any of this for the neighborhood to start getting it, to create an association at all?
No. It used to be that we would ask them to become a 501c3 as a nonprofit, but it's not required. Matter of fact, we just say don't even bother with it because we're going to work with them, through the grant process. So there's really no financial burden on them. They just need to coordinate with us on what they want to do. And what we do with the grant program, it's once a year, like the one that's coming up for 2025, the completion date for that application is February 7th. And then they have till early October to get everything finished. By that I mean complete the project, provide receipts for reimbursements, and then photos so that we can kind of celebrate what it is that they've completed.
And that's the grant program?
That is the neighborhood grant program.
Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about that. Who would qualify for that? Because that's not open to all neighborhoods, correct?
Only if they are registered. So of the about 56 that we have within the city, not all of those are registered. There might be 20, 25 of those that are, but that's also the incentive to maybe getting them registered. It would allow them to apply for a grant, to work within their own neighborhood of whatever that project might be. They can kind of use their imagination, whatever helps to connect people, whatever helps to maybe strengthen that neighborhood. I think just this past year for 2024, we had about 10 of those actually apply for funding. And a lot of that was for either a national night out, which is in August, or a block party. And those have been great opportunities for people to get to know each other. So we've increased some funding and allowing neighborhoods to do that every year. But then if there is a separate kind of a project that they want to do, which our boulevard tree replacement with losing our ash trees,
sure,
that's been a big one in the past few years. And then this year we're also opening it up. So those that have ash trees on their private property, If they take those down, that we will allow a new tree to be placed either in their front or backyard, which we don't typically do on private property, but this is good incentive for people to take down those trees, because that'll become a hazard.
Is there information online about that? Because it's a grant and there is a deadline. And so
Yes.
if you see this and you want more information on that, is it siouxfalls.gov?
It is siouxfalls.gov, and if they just put in neighborhood grant, it'll take them right to that website or webpage with that application to be able to apply. So, yeah.
What, I guess one question has to be asked about, do some of these neighborhood associations or gatherings start because of a problem? Is that how some of them start? And then how do you smooth that over to get everybody going, okay, we can be friends, let's have a neighborhood. You know, you go back to the Gladys Kravitz, I know half the people are not gonna know who that is. It's from the 60s and Bewitched, but she was in everybody's business and
Yes.
making everybody in the neighborhood crazy. Do some of these start that way, and then does it improve?
Yeah, a lot of times there is, because an issue, and I could mention a few, but it's really irrelevant because those issues have been worked through and not current. But one of probably our strongest neighborhoods, I would say, is All Saints. And I think they may have gotten started because they wanted to do a cleanup along the railroad tracks that cut through that neighborhood. I mean, that's kind of expanded into like Pettigrew and a little bit more into downtown. So that may have started as an original issue for them when we didn't have much funding for the grant program when it started. But as everything has increased, and certainly issues and even some crime has increased, that's brought people together and addressing different issues. Traffic is a problem, and they've looked at installing traffic calming equipment to try to slow things down a little bit, or have people at least pay attention, especially if we have pedestrians crossing 14th Street. So it just depends on what's going on.
Sure.
And maybe to add on to that, you know, a challenge might bring people together initially, and I think there's a lot of value in that because those are people that are experiencing that intimately. And so it's something that maybe those of us that in a position to be able to support and help may not be experiencing that consistently or be in those spaces to experience. So I would say maybe the objective of when something is started with a challenge is that we get the opportunity to help and support change in that, and then over time encourage, okay, let's be proactive, let's dream, let's be visionary about the things that we can do in these neighborhoods and make this neighborhood something that everybody who lives there is really proud of, before it gets to a situation where, you know, we're really frustrated or really disgruntled about something.
Sure. From your experience, what are some of the things that people ask for the most? Is it lighting? Is it park help? What is it?
It's really a variety of things, and it really is dependent on where they're located within the city. You know, in the core area, doing light audits, that's been a big interest of people. We've done that in Whittier, we've done it in All Saints, Cathedral. That's been a great resource with our light and power department. With police, that's integral as well. We usually try to have them involved in some of those neighborhood meetings and attendance to be able to talk about some of the issues where we're seeing maybe a few more problems. But again, as Miranda mentioned, it's really what may start bringing people together within a neighborhood. But again, then they're building that connection with the city and the resources that we have that they may never have been aware of, whether it's housing or property maintenance or whatever those issues might be. It puts them in direct contact with those individuals, and they feel like, you know, they have a voice, being able to reach out to those entities.
I would add, in addition to that list, another item that I hear from folks is sometimes even questions about developments, you know, about rezones, or, you know, what's going to go there, and transitions from parcel to parcel. And so that's some things that neighborhood associations have gotten involved in, or that, you know, folks kind of spearhead questions or input on as well.
Okay, very good. Well, I think that is our time, unless you have more that you wanted to address.
There's only one other thing that I would bring up since you mentioned about a loan program. So housing does have those separate programs, and that's based on income levels. But historic preservation also has a loan program that we just started in 2024. That was the pilot year. And it's a zero interest loan program. And it's revolving, so we have a set budget, and in 2024 we were able to offer funds to 5 households, so it has to be owner-occupied within our 5 historic districts, and that's because the expense of historic properties are typically a little bit more, but it allows them to make some of the upgrades that they might need to the exteriors of their home, whether that's paint or replacing windows or siding or whatever that might be. So that's another opportunity, and that program just opened yesterday as well and is available on our website.
Okay, and that's like at siouxfalls.gov again.
Yes.
And look for that. One question I have is, if there are guidelines when you live in a historic neighborhood that you can't just go and put any kind of windows in, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so there is more of a challenge, right? And that's why it's important. You know, that was my question too, is why is that so important to make sure that these historic homes are renovated to the standards that are needed?
That goes back to our Board of Historic Preservation and trying to be really intentional about some of those historic neighborhoods in our community. And sometimes matching those requirements or matching those aesthetics in order to preserve those historic districts come at a different kind of cost. And so I think that this kind of program is really great for us to be able to support folks that choose to be in those kinds of neighborhoods in our city.
Yeah, and you probably have more experience with that.
Yeah, and you know, people think that maybe those guidelines are overwhelming and kind of obstructive, but they're really not. We try to work with them. We don't say, oh, you have to put a wood window, which is very expensive, back in. There's lots of options, and working with the board, they'll find in a meeting that they're going to make more recommendations. They're not going to come out and say no. We will work with them until we can get to the point of yes on a lot of those projects. So I think it's pretty helpful to actually work with our board. So.
Well, great. Well, thank you both for joining us for Inside Town Hall and giving us all of this information about our city. And what they're saying is get out and get to know your neighbors, and you can get those block parties going, and it also helps with the neighborhood watch as well. And so that's our time for Inside Town Hall. If you would like to see any more information of what's going on in the city of Sioux Falls, go to siouxfalls.gov. We'll see you next month.